Hello and thanks for joining us. My name's Ian Stroud.
And my name is David Malone, and this is Hyperland.
Oh, I do like it when you say Hyperland.
Makes you feel all warm and cuddly.
Yeah, so we're recording something now because I'm going away on holiday soon. And
outrageous.
I know.
Slacker.
I've not had one for 5 years, but there you go. So I thought,
we'll let you off then.
Let's record something that I can pop into the little Hyperland circus wheel.
What's it going to be about then, mate?
A little bit of looking backwards and a little bit of looking forwards, I think. And also anything else that's come up. I mean, we've covered so many things. I mean, actually, let's start at the beginning. Back at it. Were you making a little stick in the boot in? You mentioned Dostoevsky, and
I did,
and the book where the character quoted God, basically sort of saying, "I like you over there, and you think the polar opposite, and I like you, but you sitting on the fence."
Yeah.
Thanks for that little insult. I didn't notice.
Well,
at the time,
that's not me, mate. That's not me. That's just
a great
Dostoevsky, St. Paul, and God, apparently.
Okay, all right. And actually, there was a comment on YouTube a few weeks ago that's saying something about I'll get piles if I keep sitting there. I'm pulling the splinters out daily. Put it that way.
Well, no, but it's good because I tend to get all heated. And you're the voice of reason going, hang on a second.
Well,
that's fine. That's good. Because if it was all left to me, I'd be all,
Well, it kind of takes us to one of the more popular podcasts that we've put out in the last few weeks, months, and that's the Jonathan and Jonathan podcast.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, it was extremely moving, but also it just helped the understanding and see a bigger picture of what, and also the previous one that we did with Kostya. Where he was sort of saying, the Palestinians are the Jews of the Arab world, and it does. I mean, I can go through everything that happened since Hamas launched that attack, and what my mind is sort of saying, and how difficult I found it, and I thought Jonathan and Jonathan, it was kind of like another level of the whole culture in Israel. I kind of still think, although everything's pointing against a two-state solution, I actually think there should be a three-state solution. You're not going to like this one.
I mean, go ahead.
Well, everyone's going to hate me. Well, I think there's a Palestine. I think there's an Israel, and I think there's a state of Jerusalem.
Yeah, you're not going to have any friends.
Yeah, I can hear the tumbleweed.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose you could imagine in some parallel, much nicer universe, that you'd get sort of UNESCO or someone saying, look, this is an extraordinary site that's important to, if you take Islam, Christianity and Judaism, it's important to more than half of the world.
Yeah.
And we should make it a sort of UNESCO city, a bit independent, sort of a bit like Washington is separate from all of the states in America.
Well, I was going to. Yeah, I was going to compare it to the Vatican, but that was going to.
No, that's a better comparison. Yeah, that's better. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, who would actually oversee everything? But it's just that.
Yeah, that's the point. You've put your finger on it already. Because have you ever been to what's the church there where?
Oh, the church on the rock.
No, there's a something like the Holy Sepulchre or something.
Yes.
Yeah. And there's at least 3 different Christian denominations in there, and it's like armed warfare. Jeez. And occasionally they have fistfights with each other.
Oh man! But
because
the thing is,
they say no, we're in charge of this bit. So I mean,
Yeah, we're in charge. We're in charge of the milk at lunchtime, and you're.
Yeah,
in
I
charge
don't
of
think it
the
would work, mate.
I know, but nothing else has. For how long?
That's true.
I mean, this is the point that it's got to. You kind of want to sort of grab the little tuft of hair at the top of the ear and pull these two sides together. I know it's simplistic. I know it's not going to happen. I know everyone's out protesting, and I can't. I find it really difficult to pick a side. I'm on everyone's side, but I'm on no one's in terms of, yeah. I think there's too much hatred already.
There is. Yeah, I mean, I've talked to a few people from Israel after we did the Jonathan one, and it's interesting. None of them disliked it. They didn't say, "Oh, that's terrible."
Yeah.
But I had two reactions from inside Israel. Well, I mean, I had several, but the two I'm going to mention. One said that they felt that Jonathan and Jonathan, they said, yeah, but they're neither of them living in Israel. Things have moved on in Israel. They sound like expats. And I suppose that's true. But, I said to this person, yeah, but that doesn't mean they shouldn't have an opinion.
Yeah.
And it is the great sadness of being an expat. I met lots of sad expats when I lived in America, Brit expats,
yeah,
because they're deeply in love with the country that they grew up in, but they're also painfully aware that they are gradually separating from it because it's changing and they're not there to be part of that change.
Yeah.
Which makes expats, they know that it's a sad position to be in. That was why I asked them about whether they missed home.
Yeah.
Because it is the worst part of being an expat. And I felt that to a very small extent when I was a young lad living in America, because it was really not my cup of tea.
Yeah.
And you sort of miss home. You miss the place where you think, oh, this is my place.
Yeah.
And then someone else said, well, they're both, as they themselves said, from one very particular demography within Israel. In other words, the elite. And they said, I don't like being lectured by Israel's equivalent of boys from Eton. I said, well, that's not fair. They're not boys from Eton at all. And the people who said these things didn't say, oh, it was terrible. They said it was very interesting and I was quite moved, but. Yeah. And so even amongst people who were well disposed to the message, there was still a sort of resistance to being lectured in their terms from someone who was outside.
Yeah.
It's intractable and difficult, and but I'm glad we did it.
I know I am too, and I think it was another bit of a jigsaw that allows people to see a bigger picture. But I'm going to take a really tentative little path down now. It's the Abraham Accords that are happening, still happening, not happening.
Mm-hmm.
There was one person that probably should have taken a bit more credit for where we were possibly going, which was perhaps a more agreeable future before this happened. And that was, funnily enough, you mentioning America, that was Trump. And this is a very tentative link.
Sure, yeah. I'm right behind you, mate, about 400 yards behind you.
Well, no, I'm trying
carry
to get.
On.
I'm trying to get
I like
to
watching a man set himself on fire.
I know. I've already got enough enemies suggesting Jerusalem as a third state.
Go on, no, you're in it now.
I know. I might as well go all the way in. Yeah, I'm not a fan, but something's coming up this year, and we've probably. I mean, I don't want to piss off. You talking about people outside the country. I get really annoyed when, was it Obama came over and, oh no, it wasn't. It was Biden who came over and was talking about the leaving of the European Union and you've got to get this border sorted out. It's got nothing to do with you. And in the same way, Biden and Trump have got nothing to do with me, but they have in some ways.
Sure.
Leader of the free, yes. But I can't think of two worse candidates. I'd struggle to go out on the street now and find two people that are worse to stand.
You're talking about Trump and Biden?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, I agree with you. It's rather than being fixated on, saying, oh, I want one or t'other to win.
Yeah.
The fact that it's these two, a sort of spray tan kumquat versus a man who is showing the signs of senility.
Yeah.
I mean, my dad went senile.
Yeah.
So when people pop up and say, no, look at this clip, he's fine, that doesn't mean shit.
Yeah.
There were times when my dad was away with the fairies and other times where he was as sharp as he's ever been.
Yeah.
That is the nature of the beginnings of dementia.
Yeah.
You know, one day he would phone me up and say, do you know where I am? And I would say, yeah, Dad, you're in Coombe Hay, which was his retirement home.
Yeah.
And he'd go, yes, it is, but do you know where Coombe Hay is? I'd say, no, Dad, tell me. I mean, it was around the corner in Scarborough. And he'd go, Moscow. And you know the most amazing thing, David? I said, no. He said, they've moved all my stuff here. And then I'd say, shall I pop round? He'd go, oh, that would be lovely, David. And I'd pop round and I'd read him poetry and he would snap back to who he'd always been and make the most interesting and incisive things to say about the poems we were reading.
Yeah.
As clever as anyone you'd ever come across. My father was very, very, he was ferociously intelligent. And it was lovely. Yeah. And we'd have the same kind of conversations we'd always had. And the minute we finished talking about poetry, he'd be back in Moscow or wherever it was, him in the 50s. So, you know, I don't see how you can not listen to the fumblings and bumblings of Biden and think there's something not quite right here. And it's no good people saying, yeah, but other times he's fine. What about, I don't want someone who's fine some of the time to be in the position of President of the United States, carrying with a little man who follows him around with a nuclear football.
Especially if we've got to
He's all right some of the time.
Well, do we have to send you over to read poetry to him and snap him?
But it is, I'm with you, Ian. It's a measure of how catastrophically broken the American system is. There are 270 million Americans. I refuse to believe that the best they've got is someone at the beginning of dementia and a spray tan kumquat.
Yeah.
I just don't think that's possible. And yet that's who the system has put up.
Well, I know 3 people that are better than them anyway. But enough of my family.
But I tell you what, I do think that there's a very good chance that Trump will win.
No, I agree with you, mate. I am. But anyway, I'm going to cut this off because it just.
Well, no, you can't now. You can't.
No, but we'll do a full podcast talking about it.
Well, can I say one thing that just to annoy you and annoy everybody else? Well, not really, not to annoy, but I tell you what I think the worst outcome for America will be, even worse than Trump winning, will be if either one of them wins, but by a very narrow margin.
Yeah.
Because then Trump questioned the last election, so he would certainly question this one, and so would his supporters. But if it's very narrow and Trump wins by a very narrow margin, despite the fact that the Democrats and the Democrat supporters have spent all this time saying for Trump to question the election is tantamount to, advocating a coup.
Yeah.
I suspect they won't be able to resist the temptation. And I think if it's a very narrow victory, what will happen is that you'll see the beginning of the balkanization of America.
Yeah.
I don't mean the Hollywood version where, they have separate flags and they draw up armies and, put up barbed wire fences against each other. But I think you'll see a real change, a historic change in the relative power of the states versus the feds. And we're already seeing it in Texas over the border. And that increasingly states will go, no, we're no longer going to accept the Fed version of this. This is states' business. And that will be a historic and massive change if it starts to happen. And I think it will.
But do you think that would be,
no matter who wins?
Would that be something for the good? One yes or no?
Possibly, but it's very, very destabilizing. Yeah. So though it could lead to something good, it could equally. It'll just be very destabilizing.
And at the current climate, it would mess an awful lot of stuff up. And never mind China, Ukraine.
I mean, the only
Israel.
way it ends up being an Armageddon kind of change is if it's felt to destabilize the dollar, because the dollar is in a perilous position as it is.
Yeah.
Anyway, I just thought
I can hear all those North Korean hackers now tapping away on their keyboards trying to make this happen. Anyway, yeah, another podcast that we did, and I thought another. I don't know how much more we can or should use the WHO as a punchback, but it's just after we did.
It is very, very punchable.
Well, actually, after we did the podcast with Susie, and I thought Susie was fantastic. Really engaging, and
she's one of the good people. She really is. She's been dedicated, and she's so self-effacing.
Yeah,
and she's put such a lot of work in over decades.
No, it was lovely, and it certainly was a treat for me to be involved in that conversation with her. But do you think we could do something more on the WHO? What's wrong with it? I mean, they were talking years ago about the structure there.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think there will be more to say about the WHO because after the COVID pandemic, a lot of the talk was, and I've been one of those people saying, China misled us all.
Yeah.
And the WHO were utterly supine.
Yeah.
But they'd have no investigative powers themselves. So when they had the WHO team that went there, they weren't a little team of Hercule Poirots, with their wax moustaches going, this is very interesting. Let me have a look at this. It wasn't like that. They were basically like kindergarten children, just being given, little packs and packed lunches and some crayons. And so here you go. You can go and tell the world what we've shown you.
Yeah.
And that's how it was. And so since then, there's been a lot of talk about, we need, it comes under the rubric of pandemic preparedness.
Yes.
And
that's not going too well at the moment, is it?
Well, no, it's not. But what's worried people, especially of a libertarian persuasion, which I'm not, but I talk to a lot of libertarians, is that there's this feeling, maybe we should give the WHO investigative powers to go into a country and go, I'm sorry, we're the WHO, we're saying this, we need to know that, you've got to sign up for this.
Yeah.
If we declare something a pandemic, these are the rules and regulations everyone has to follow. And a lot of people have started to be worried and say, do we really want to give an unelected supranational quango
that kind of power
powers to say you will wear a mask or you will have to take this this particular medicine or this particular inoculation.
You will be locked down and you can't travel and you can't.
And I find myself in the interesting position of having railed against the ineffectiveness and what I saw as political corruption of the WHO, also thinking, but I certainly don't want them to have powers to tell me what I should do because I don't trust them.
but in the podcast with Susie, the IAEA, that kind of leverage and money to turn people. I mean, in the film, I've tried to dust the film off, and it's on our YouTube channel.
Oh, great!
A version of it. So, I mean, that's a good 50.
What did you think of the opening? Did you find it as moving as me?
Yeah.
It's astonishing, isn't it? It's so raw. The footage is so raw, isn't it? It's handheld, and that. I mean, I can't remember, but it didn't look like there were that many cuts in it. I think the editor, someone in your position just said, "Mate, we're just going to put this out." I mean, there it is.
Yeah.
And so it just has that kind of shit. This just happened right in front of the camera.
Yeah, she was 13 or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know where to
Sorry, I just wanted to know what you thought of it.
Well, okay. Talking of editors, another subject I think is worth looking at. I kind of wanted to do it before I went away, but I thought actually I personally probably need a few weeks away from the industry. But the television industry at the moment, we've both been involved in it. We both are involved in it. And it's gone through a pretty tough 18 months in terms of there's no work out, and the industry is really beginning to feel as if it's broken. I've got wider sort of thoughts on the industry and have done for about the last 15, since about 2005. I think there were certain changes that happened that led to super indies.
I don't know, but do you really want to slap the face that you have to smile at when you go to work? I mean,
well, no, that's why I need a couple of weeks. It's not. I mean, I worked in architecture before I came into television, so I was well aware of the steel industry in the 80s going into decline. Obviously, we had coal mining, we've had manufacturing, agricultural, farming, fishing, cars, all these industries that we've had. And I don't want to sound like some old man harping back to the good old days and how great Britain was. It's not that. I understand that the world moves on and we look for different jobs for our population to be doing, and the jobs that people don't want to do get shipped overseas, or we ship in people to do the jobs that we don't want to see. And interestingly, the BBC did a documentary recently on the coal miners.
Well, they got that one out quick, didn't they? Gosh, I mean, how long has it been? They were really on the pulse with that one. Wow, well done. News and current affairs, they don't let anything slip past, do they?
It was a well-told historic documentary, but the interesting thing was that the role.
At this point, it's almost a period drama, mate.
I know, but it was talking to people that were there at the time, and some of the people were sort of saying, "Well, actually, look at the way news and current affairs were portraying the miners at the time. They were the enemy, and the government were the heroes that were and the police force." So, I mean,
we can have this conversation, mate, but you know that I don't have very much good to say about the people who've been in charge of broadcasting since I've been in it.
I think that's part of it, though. I think that is part of the way the industry's gone. And
they're quislings. Yeah. And I've told them this to their face. I mean, needless to say, I didn't get any more work. But they are quislings. I mean, and their whole attitude was that of a quisling, which is, well, we're occupied by hostile power, so we better not say anything. And they would always, I mean, I have had this conversation with the heads of all of the science, both Channel 4 and BBC and others, numerous times.
Yeah.
And it's basically, I agree, the Gestapo are here, i.e. various governments that hated the BBC. All governments hate the BBC when they're in power. They only like them when they're in the opposition.
Yeah.
But their attitude was that of a quisling. Oh, well, let's not say boo to the Gestapo because they might do something nasty to us.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry, you're a quisling. You've got to stand up for what's right. And in my view, sorry, we're now doing the podcast, but anyway, fuck it.
No, well, we could do it. We could do something a bit longer.
I think
you know,
those people sold something that was once great, and they sold it out.
Yeah, I totally agree.
But you want to get more work in it. I'm already out, so you need to think about whether you really want to sign up.
You're not out. You're not out, mate. Because I think there's a shift, and I think that's part of the issue. And the shift is less bums on seat, less advertising, more opportunities for people to go elsewhere. I mean, we had an email a few weeks ago, sort of saying how somebody enjoyed our podcast so much that it's a conversation that's down to earth. We're not preaching, we're not shouting. And I switched the telly. I know you don't have one, but I switched the telly, and everything's ramped up to a level of, do you know what? It isn't the most exciting thing. No, actually, I don't care that you've been wanting to do this since you were a 3-year-old, because I know it's all written by some. Yeah, and at that point, I need to sort of rein back because I do work in the industry. But I think there's another thing as well that my idea of diversity seems to be different from the people that run TV, and this is where it I think it needs a full length podcast to explain what I'm getting at. It seems to be.
Yeah, I'd be careful. I have a vision of you taking off your sandals and going, see that minefield? Watch me. Watch. I'm going to take my sandals off. I'll be fine. No, really, I will.
Oh, mate, I'm coming back from a holiday early, so we don't have to put this one out.
No.
No. What I mean is it's the same people. It's the same mindset. It's the same universities and private schools that people have gone to. Therefore, everything that's put out that's not diversity. I think that's what I'm trying to get at.
There's no real diversity of
thought.
Opinion and thought.
Yes.
It's very tightly constrained.
Yes.
And well, you're right about that.
And that's all I mean. There's nothing. I welcome fully the whole fucking human race coming into the industry, but I don't feel that in the result that comes out the other end. I'm still hearing the same bollocks and it's mediocrity as well. So
it's something that I said a long time ago is that, and this was when we had when women started to really break into broadcasting, was pretty much the time that I arrived. So my first boss was when I started on a program called Antenna on BBC Two, was Jana Bennett.
Yeah.
Jana then went on to become head of Horizon, then she became head of Science and Features, and then she went on to become basically top Johnny in the BBC, the top except for the Director General. And she was great.
Yeah.
I mean, she was head and shoulders better than most.
Yeah.
But then there were lots of other women who were just as mediocre as the men that they were replacing. And I said to Jana once, I said, I don't really see how I should celebrate the fact that mediocrity now turns up in a skirt when it used to come in trousers. It's still mediocre.
Yeah.
And there's way too many of them. And promoting the mediocre because they wear a skirt, I don't care. They're still mediocre. And that was the problem. I mean, I've probably worked for more women in broadcasting than men.
I think I have as well.
3 or 4 of them were brilliant, my best bosses.
Yeah.
But then there were others you just thought, why have you got this job? I'm glad we got rid of that numpty with his open-toed sandals. He was useless. Yeah. But you're as useless.
Yeah. Yeah.
I couldn't. Yeah.
This is what I mean. This is what I mean, and I don't want people to confuse what I'm saying about diversity and what you just explained.
They will.
I know they. I don't know that. I hope they won't.
They'll misunderstand on purpose.
Well, yeah. So,
what else do you want to talk about then?
Well, I think that's kind of it in terms of sort of ideas of stuff going forward.
I think it'd be quite interesting to talk about what's going on with China.
I was going to talk about that actually. We've never done a sort of Belt and Roads kind of look at that historically, but interestingly, a lot of the influences in Africa, and at the moment, since the leader of Wagner disappeared, now we're seeing a bit of truth in terms of it. The Kremlin are coming out, and there's something in Africa that's boiling up, and I fear us somewhat for what's happening there.
Yeah, well, something. Yeah, okay.
But that's one side. But China economically,
it's interesting that we're just both China and America are in an economic predicament, different economic predicaments, except for the fact that debt looms large in both of them.
Yeah.
But it's very destabilizing. But it's all going to be shaken up as we approach the November election in America.
Yeah.
And like I say, I think there'll be major changes no matter who wins. I mean, they might stop Trump from being able to run. They're desperately trying to, because there's a lot of people who think he ought not to be allowed to. But his supporters will see this as just the establishment not allowing someone who opposes the establishment to even run. That's how they'll see it.
Yeah. Yes, yeah, and that's why he's getting more support.
Yeah. I mean, I think it would be very interesting to talk about that, but you're right, it's a longer podcast because there are so many people with slogan-y kind of opinions, and I don't like any of them.
Well, there you go. There's a few options. No, it'd be lovely to hear from the listeners, from you guys, to see if any of those float your boat. I know somebody's keen on talking about China. We've had a few comments on our Facebook page.
Well, see what occurs to you when you're out sunning yourself on your holiday.
Oh, I will. Yeah. Well, it's going to be April, mate. So
have fun, mate.
All right, mate. I will do.
I'll talk to you when you get back.
Yeah. You take care, mate.
Well, thanks for listening. And if you like that, leave us a comment. We have a place where you can comment on Substack. So go to Substack, look up David Malone or Hyperland, and leave us a comment what you thought of any of our previous podcasts, or something you'd like to see us talk about.
Thanks very much, David. That was well done.
Very professional. See you, mate.
Cheers.